When one, okay. I also have theoretical reasons for treating feminism primarily as critique. That is, I'm not convinced that feminism can stand on its own as a theory. More specifically, if we want to get a general theory of politics and justice, I'm not convinced that feminism can create its own theory. Now, that's not a criticism, right? It doesn't mean that feminism isn't valuable. It doesn't mean it isn't necessary. But I tend to think that it's always going to have to work together with some other kind of theory. In point of fact, we tend to have Marxist feminists, liberal feminists, libertarian feminists, etc. So now, why would this mean that it couldn't be a standalone theory? The reason I say that is because a lot of what's going on is identifying things as injustices or as biased. Let me focus on injustices. In order to identify something as unjust, I would argue that you've got to have a concept of what it means for something to be just. More specifically, we cannot assume that everything that disadvantages someone is unjust. Let me give an example. Years ago, I had a friend who was in graduate school. He was married, right? He and his wife had children, and she dropped out of graduate school and decided to pursue child raising full-time. At one point, the university decided to close down a lot of the family housing. They provided affordable houses for families, right? Families where one or other was a graduate student. At the same time, they expanded their childcare opportunities. So in effect, what they were saying was, we're not going to make it easy for you to live on one income, but we're going to make it a lot easier for you to have a second income. He saw this as a kind of social engineering. In his view, what the university was basically doing was saying the following, right? We're going to favor women who want to be graduate students and or have a career outside the home over women who want to devote themselves to child raising full time. We're going to economically support one and not the other. If it were a choice, if there were limited resources and you had to make a choice, either of these would disadvantage one group or the other. So how do we determine whether or not it's not only a disadvantage, but an injustice? Well, it would seem at first glance that we need to have a background conception of injustice. So my idea is this. Feminism is going to be very good at identifying injustices, but to identify them positively as injustices, it would seem that it's going to have to fall back on some other kind of theory of what's just or unjust.